For 4 long years, he waited through scorching summers, freezing winters, and endless storms. He sat in the same spot, staring down the road, hoping for someone who never came back. A German shepherd named Duke became a ghost of the past, a mystery that no one could solve. People tried to help, but he refused to leave. He was waiting, but for what or for who? Then one morning, something unbelievable happened. A single moment changed everything. You won't believe the miracle that brought this dog's story full circle. Stay until the end, because this will restore your faith in loyalty, love, and destiny. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty highway, its warmth slowly burning away the thin mist that clung to the pavement. The road was quiet except for the occasional passing car, and yet there he was like always. A German shepherd sat near the old gas station, his fur dusty and slightly unkempt, his eyes locked on the stretch of road ahead. He didn't move much, barely acknowledged the people who passed by. He just waited. For 4 years, Duke had made this spot his home. At first, no one knew where he had come from. Truck drivers, commuters, and the few remaining residents of the small town all noticed him, but no one had the heart to chase him away. They tried to feed him, and sometimes he would eat, but only after they left. If anyone got too close, he would stand up, walk a few feet away, and sit down again. He was never aggressive, never barked, never caused trouble. He just waited. The local diner owner, Martha Reynolds, 56 years old, short gray hair, kind but sharp eyes, had been one of the first to take an interest in Duke. Every morning before opening the shop, she would drive by the gas station and leave food near the old fuel pumps. "Poor thing," she would say to anyone who asked. "He's waiting for someone. I don't know who, but I hope they come back." Duke had survived brutal winters and scorching summers, always returning to the same spot. He curled up against the rusted walls of the abandoned gas station, taking shelter from the wind and rain. Some nights, when the town was quiet, people would hear him whimper softly, a lonely, heartbreaking sound that no one could ignore. Every now and then, someone would try to take him in. A trucker tried to coax him into his rig once. A young woman even brought a leash, hoping to lead him away. But Duke never left. The moment anyone tried, he would pull away, run a few feet, and sit back down, eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he was waiting for someone who promised to return. It was a cold autumn morning when Noah Patterson, 32 years old, short dark brown hair, lean build, and investigative journalist, first saw Duke. Noah had driven through the town countless times, always heading toward his next assignment. He had noticed the dog before, sitting by the gas station, but never paid much attention until today. Something about Duke's posture, the silent patience in his eyes, made Noah slow his car. He pulled into the gas station and sat in his car, watching. The dog was completely still, focused, waiting. Noah grabbed his phone and snapped a quick photo. Then curiosity took over. He walked into Martha's diner, the scent of fresh coffee and bacon filling the air. A few regulars sat at the counter, chatting about the upcoming storm. Martha glanced up from behind the counter. "Coffee?" she asked. Noah said, sliding onto a stool. "And can I ask you something?" Martha poured his coffee and leaned against the counter. "You're going to ask about the dog, aren't you?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "So it's not just me." Martha chuckled. "Honey, that dog has been sitting out there for 4 years. You're a little late to the mystery." Noah frowned. "For years? Waiting for what?" "Matesai. That's the thing. No one really knows." She wiped her hands on a towel before continuing. "Some folks say he belonged to a trucker who used to stop here. Others think he got lost and never found his way home. But me." She looked out the window at the faithful figure still sitting by the gas station. "I think he's waiting for his family." Noah glanced back outside, his mind racing. He had covered a lot of human interest stories before. Missing persons, survival tales, even reunions between lost pets and owners. But this was different. This dog had waited 4 years in the same place. Why? Noah pulled out his phone and opened his investigative notes app. There was a story here, and he was going to find out the truth. For years ago, Duke had a home. He wasn't a stray, and he wasn't lost. He was loved. His days were filled with laughter, warmth, and the boundless energy of a boy who adored him. Lucas Carter, just 10 years old at the time, had practically grown up with Duke. From the moment his parents brought the tiny German Shepherd puppy home, the two had been inseparable. Lucas would wake up early just to be the first to greet Duke. The dog slept at the foot of his bed, followed him to the kitchen every morning, and waited eagerly at the door every afternoon when Lucas returned from school. His mother, Emily Carter, 38, gentle but strong-willed with warm brown eyes and shoulder-length chestnut hair, often said, "I don't know who's more excited, Lucas to see Duke or Duke to see Lucas." His father, Benjamin Carter, 41, tall, sturdy, but always carrying the weight of responsibility in his sharp blue eyes, wasn't a man of many words. But whenever he returned from work, he always knelt down, rubbing Duke's ears and muttering, "Good boy," looking out for the family. And Duke always was. He wasn't just their dog. He was part of them. Until the night everything changed. The storm had rolled in fast, bringing heavy rain and wind that made the roads slick and dangerous. The Carter family had been driving home from a weekend trip to visit Emily's parents. Duke sat in the back with Lucas, his head resting on the boy's lap. The rhythmic patter of rain against the car windows made everything feel peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, a pair of headlights appeared, too close, too fast. Emily barely had time to scream before the impact sent their car skidding off the highway. The world flipped, twisted, and shattered. Glass broke, Mel screamed, and Lucas cried out for his parents. Then silence. When Duke came to, everything was dark. His ears rang, his body ached, and the smell of smoke filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear voices shouting, sirens, the sound of someone crying. He stumbled forward, disoriented. The car was on its side, the front end crushed, and Lucas was gone. No, not gone, being carried away. Duke saw people, firefighters, paramedics, strangers, rushing to pull Benjamin, Emily, and Lucas from the wreck. He barked, trying to get to them, but someone grabbed him, trying to hold him back. Panic overtook him. Duke twisted, yanked, broke free, and ran. He didn't know where he was going, but he needed to find them. Through the storm, through the chaos, he ran until the world became unfamiliar, until he found himself on a lonely stretch of highway. And that's where he stayed for days. Duke waited. He wandered up and down the road, searching for the car, for Lucas, for anything that made sense. But they never came. Eventually, hunger and exhaustion forced him toward the small town nearby. That's when he found a gas station. It was close to the accident site. It had shelter, and somehow Duke believed that if he stayed there long enough, his family would come back for him. So he waited. For 4 years. Present day, Noah sat in his car scrolling through old missing dog reports on his laptop. He had spent the past few hours trying to track down any information about Duke. Then he found it. A report from 4 years ago, filed by Benjamin and Emily Carter. Their German Shepherd Duke had gone missing after a car accident on Highway 214. Noah's heart pounded as he stared at the screen. The accident site was less than a mile from where Duke had been waiting all this time. This wasn't just a stray dog. This was a dog who had never stopped waiting for his family, and they had no idea he was still alive. Noah sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing. 4 years. This dog had been waiting here for 4 years. The pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place, but the bigger question remained. What now? He glanced at Duke, still sitting near the gas station, eyes locked on the road, still waiting. Noah couldn't just walk away. He grabbed his camera from the passenger seat. If this story didn't deserve to be told, nothing did. Noah parked his car at a distance, careful not to startle Duke, then set up his camera. The evening light was perfect, soft golden hues that highlighted the quiet loneliness in the dog's eyes. He hit record. This is Duke, and for 4 years, he has been waiting. The words came naturally. No one knows exactly how he survived, but every day he sits in the same place, staring at the same road, waiting for someone who never came back. People have tried to help him, but he refuses to leave. He's waiting for a reason. Noah zoomed in on Duke's worn-out fur, the way his ears twitched at passing cars, the hope in his tired eyes. But today, I found out the truth. For years ago, Duke was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever, and what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them. He let the camera linger on Duke for a moment before stopping the recording. He knew a good story when he saw one, and this was going to touch hearts. Noah posted the video on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the caption, "The dog who never left." This German shepherd has been sitting in the same spot for 4 years. After a tragic accident, his family thought he was gone forever, but he never gave up. Now, we need to find them. Can you help find Duke's family, our faithful dog? Then he waited, but he didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, the video had over 10,000 views. People flooded the comments. "This is breaking my heart. Someone find his family. Dogs are too pure for this world. Please tell me he's getting help." Then something unbelievable happened. A woman commented, "I think I know this dog." Across the country, in a quiet suburban home, Lucas Carter, now 14 years old, brown hair, hazel eyes, was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. He clicked on a video someone had sent him. The moment the dog's face appeared on screen, his heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. He sat up, gripping the phone tight, barely able to breathe as he listened to the man in the video. For years ago, Duke was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever, and what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them. Tears welled in Lucas's eyes. His voice barely came out when he whispered, "Duke." His mother, Emily Carter, walked into the room just as Lucas turned to her. His voice trembling, he held up the phone. "Mom, I think they found him." Emily frowned and took the phone from his shaking hands. She hit play, watching the footage. Her hand covered her mouth. Oh my God! Within 3 hours, Noah's inbox was flooded. Thousands of messages, reporters, rescue organizations, people offering to adopt Duke. But one message stood out. It was from Emily Carter. Noah opened it, his pulse racing. "That's our dog. That's Duke. We thought he was gone forever. Please tell me he's still there." Noah stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was it. The miracle Duke had been waiting for. Noah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He reread Emily Carter's message again and again. "That's our dog. That's Duke. We thought he was gone forever. Please tell me he's still there." He exhaled sharply, his chest tightening. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was real. A family had spent 4 years believing they had lost their beloved dog, and all this time, Duke had been waiting for them. Noah started typing. "Emily, I just saw your message. Duke is still here. He never left. He's been waiting at the same spot for 4 years. He won't leave no matter what anyone does." He hit send, and barely had time to set his phone down before a reply popped up. "Where are you? We need to come." Noah's heart pounded. He quickly sent the location and his number. A second later, his phone rang. "Hello." The voice on the other end was shaking. "Is this real?" It was Emily. Noah cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at him right now. He's right here." Silence, then a choked sob. "We're coming. Oh my God, we're coming." Noah swallowed hard. "How far are you?" "We live in Denver now. It's a long drive, but we're leaving right now." Noah did the math. That was over 10 hours away. "I'll be here," he assured her. "Duke isn't going anywhere." Emily's voice cracked. "Please tell him we're coming." Noah's throat tightened. He looked at Duke, still sitting in his usual spot by the gas station, watching the road like he always did. I think he already knows. The next few hours passed in a blur. Noah couldn't leave Duke alone. Not now. He stayed nearby, watching the dog's every movement, making sure nothing disturbed him. Word had spread quickly. Locals started gathering, murmuring among themselves about the reunion that was about to happen. Martha, from the diner, brought Duke some fresh food and a warm blanket, her hands trembling. I knew he was waiting for someone. I just didn't know who. A few truck drivers who had seen Duke over the years stopped by, sharing their own stories of how they had tried to help but never understood why he wouldn't leave. Now they did. Duke's loyalty had never wavered. As night fell, the town grew quieter. Noah sat near Duke, the cold creeping in. He pulled his jacket tighter and glanced at the time. 4 hours left. Duke shifted beside him. For the first time, Noah saw something different in the dog's expression. A flicker of anticipation, like he could feel that something was about to change. Noah whispered, "Just a little longer, buddy. They're coming." Duke's ears twitched, but he didn't take his eyes off the road. It was just before dawn when headlights appeared in the distance. Noah stood up, his heart pounding. He watched as the car slowed, then pulled over onto the gravel lot of the gas station. The moment the engine stopped, the passenger door flew open. Emily Carter stepped out first. She was trembling, clutching her coat around her, her eyes desperately scanning the area. Benjamin followed, his face unreadable, but his hands were clenched at his sides. Then, from the back seat, a boy stepped out. Lucas, now 14, taller, more grown, but still with the same hopeful eyes. No one spoke. Duke had stood up, his ears perked, his body rigid, his eyes locked onto the 3 figures standing near the car. The world seemed to hold its breath. Emily took a hesitant step forward. "Duke." The dog didn't move. Lucas's voice broke the silence. "It's me, buddy." Duke's ears flicked, his nose twitched, and then a single step forward. Noah's breath caught. Duke's tail gave the slightest movement. Emily let out a sob. Lucas crouched down, opening his arms. His voice cracked. "Come here, boy." Duke took another step, then another, and suddenly he was running. Emily let out a cry as Duke reached them, barreling into Lucas, nearly knocking him over. The boy buried his face in the dog's fur, sobbing. You waited for us." Benjamin knelt, his strong, stoic facade crumbling as he stroked Duke's back. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice breaking. Good boy." Emily wrapped her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. Duke let out a sound. Not a bark, not a whimper, but something deeper, a sound of pure relief. Noah swallowed hard, his eyes burning. The dog who had waited for 4 years had finally come home. The drive home was quiet. Duke lay in the back seat, curled up beside Lucas, who never stopped stroking his fur. Every few minutes, the boy would whisper, "I missed you, buddy." Though Duke didn't respond with his usual playful licks or wagging tail, he didn't move away either. That was enough for now. Emily glanced in the rear-view mirror, watching them, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. She had dreamed of this moment for years, bringing Duke home. But as much as she wanted to believe everything would go back to normal, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Duke wasn't the same dog they had lost, and after 4 years of waiting in the cold alone, trusting humans again wouldn't come easily. When they finally pulled into the driveway, Lucas nudged Duke gently. "We're home, boy." The dog lifted his head slowly, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar house. It wasn't the same one he remembered. After the accident, the Carters had moved from their old home in Wyoming to Denver, Colorado. The house was bigger with a spacious backyard, but to Duke, it wasn't home. Lucas unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door. He stepped out, waiting for Duke to follow. The dog hesitated for the first time since they had found him. He wasn't running toward them. Emily's breath caught. She exchanged a look with Benjamin, who nodded and stepped forward, crouching at the open door. "Duke," Benjamin said, his voice soft but firm. "It's okay, boy. Come on." Duke's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Lucas crouched beside his father. "You're safe now. I promise." Seconds passed, then slowly, cautiously, Duke stepped out. His paw touched the pavement, like he was walking on unfamiliar ground. His body remained tense, his ears flicking at every sound. The wind rustled the trees, and he turned his head sharply. A passing car made his tail lower. He was waiting for something to go wrong. Inside, Lucas led Duke to his old dog bed in the corner of the living room. "It's yours, buddy," he said, patting the soft cushion. Duke sniffed it but didn't lay down. Instead, he paced his tail low, his body stiff. The warmth of the house, the smells, the voices, it was all too much. Emily kneeled, reaching out a hand. "You're home now," she whispered. Duke flinched. Lucas saw it happen. The way Duke's muscles tensed, the way his eyes darted toward the door as if planning an escape. Lucas's chest tightened. Duke had spent 4 years outside in the cold, the rain, surviving on his own. Did he even remember what home felt like? The first few nights were the hardest. Duke refused to sleep inside. Lucas tried everything. He laid out blankets, left food near his bed, even slept on the floor beside him. But no matter what, Duke wouldn't settle down. Instead, he curled up near the back door, staring at it as if he was still waiting for something, for a family that had left him behind or for a past that no longer existed. Lucas lay awake watching him. He wanted to reach out to comfort him. But how do you fix a heart that has been waiting in silence for 4 years? So he gave Duke what he had given them: time. The breakthrough came on a cold morning, a week later. Lucas woke up early, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he made his way downstairs. When he reached the living room, he froze. Duke was not by the door. He was curled up on his dog bed. Lucas didn't move, didn't breathe. The German shepherd was resting. His body finally relaxed. His breathing was slow, steady. Lucas's heart swelled. It wasn't much, but it was something. He grabbed his phone and sent a text to his mom, who was still upstairs. "Mom, he's sleeping on his bed." Seconds later, her reply came. "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." Lucas set his phone down and sat on the floor a few feet away, watching Duke as he slept in his home for the first time in 4 years. That night, Lucas lay on the couch, flipping through his old photo album. The pictures of Duke as a puppy made him smile. Then he felt movement beside him. He turned his head, and his heart nearly stopped. Duke was standing next to him, staring at him. Lucas didn't dare move. Then, slowly, cautiously, Duke placed his head on Lucas's lap. Lucas's eyes burned as he stroked the dog's fur. "You remember me, don't you?" he whispered. Duke let out a soft breath, and for the first time since coming home, he wagged his tail. Duke had come a long way in the weeks since his return. He had started eating regularly, sleeping inside, and even following Lucas around the house. He no longer flinched when Emily reached out to pet him. He wagged his tail more, but there were still moments of hesitation. The door. Every time someone opened the back door, Duke's ears perked, his muscles tensed, and for a split second, it looked like he was thinking about running. Lucas noticed it every time. His parents said it would take time, that Duke had spent so long waiting to be reunited that he wasn't sure how to stop. Lucas wasn't worried about time. He was worried about what would happen if Duke ever got the chance to leave. He would find out soon enough. The afternoon was quiet and crisp, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. Lucas had just gotten home from school, dropping his backpack near the door. Duke greeted him, his tail giving a small wag. As Lucas knelt down to scratch behind his ears, he smiled. "You want to go outside, buddy?" Duke tilted his head. Lucas smiled again. "Come on, let's try it." He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. They had kept Duke on a leash whenever he was outside, making sure he wouldn't panic and bolt. But today, Lucas wanted to see if Duke could finally trust that this was his home. He walked to the back door and slowly opened it. Duke stepped forward, hesitant at first, sniffing the air. Lucas stepped onto the porch, watching carefully. "Go on," he said. Duke's ears twitched, and his paws touched the grass. He took a few cautious steps forward, looking around the backyard. Then a loud crash echoed through the neighborhood. Fireworks. Duke froze. His entire body went stiff. His ears pinned back, his tail lowered. Another explosion of sound. Before Lucas could react, Duke turned and ran. Lucas sprinted after him. "Duke!" The dog was already halfway across the yard, heading for the open gate. Lucas's heart pounded. He should have closed it. His legs burned as he pushed himself faster, but Duke was quicker. For the first time in weeks, Duke's instincts took over. The sound of fireworks, the open space, the panic. His body remembered survival. He slipped through the gate and onto the sidewalk. Lucas's voice broke as he shouted, "Duke, wait!" The dog skidded to a stop. For a long, breathless second, he stood at the edge of the street. Lucas saw the conflict in his eyes. For years of waiting, for years of looking for something that had been lost, for years of believing that if he left, maybe he would find what he had been searching for. Lucas's voice was desperate. "Don't go." Duke looked back at him, and then he made his choice. He turned around. Lucas exhaled sharply, his hands shaking as he crouched down. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." Duke took one step toward him, then another. And then, with a soft whimper, he pressed his head into Lucas's chest. Lucas wrapped his arms around him, his voice thick. "You're home." Duke's tail gave a small wag. For the first time, he truly believed it. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the Carters' backyard. The days had started to get shorter, but Duke's journey toward healing had just begun. He wasn't the same dog that had walked into their home weeks ago. Duke had changed, not just in the way he behaved, but in the way he looked at the world. Now, differently, less fearful, less guarded. Lucas stood at the edge of the yard, watching Duke run. The dog's form was a blur of brown and black, his tail held high as he sprinted across the grass. No hesitation, no signs of doubt. Duke was finally letting himself be free. For the past month, Duke had spent more time outside, running freely in the backyard, his pace steady and relaxed. Emily had been so worried about letting him go outside without the leash, but Lucas insisted. He knew that Duke needed to trust again, needed to know he wasn't trapped. It was a slow process, but each day, Duke grew more comfortable. The fireworks incident was a setback, but it had also been a turning point. Duke realized for the first time that it was okay to be here, to stay. "Hey, Duke!" Lucas shouted, waving his arms. Duke came to an immediate stop, turning to face Lucas with a sparkle of pure joy in his eyes. He ran back, bounding toward Lucas like he had never been away. When Duke reached him, he skidded to a stop and jumped up, placing his front paws on Lucas's chest. Lucas laughed, steadying himself as Duke licked his face, his tail wagging furiously. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" Lucas said, through his laughter, his voice thick with emotion. Duke barked once, a deep, joyful sound, before hopping down and running in a circle around him. It was his new game, chasing Lucas, then pausing as if to say, "Catch me if you can." Lucas couldn't help but smile. This wasn't the same dog that had been lost and alone in the world for so long. This was Duke, the dog who had come home. Inside the house, Emily and Benjamin watched from the window, their faces soft with relief. The past month had been one of rebuilding. Not just Duke's trust, but their family's trust in the world and each other. Emily looked at Benjamin, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he remembers us?" Benjamin nodded, his eyes never leaving Duke. "I think he does." Lucas was still laughing, chasing Duke across the yard, his voice filled with the pure joy of the moment. Duke's running feet made a rhythmic sound as he dashed around Lucas. Emily saw the dog glancing back every time Lucas called his name. "Good boy," Emily whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. Benjamin reached out, squeezing her hand. "He's home." It wasn't just a family who had noticed a change in Duke. Martha from the diner had stopped by earlier that week, bringing Duke his favorite treats. She smiled as she handed them over to Lucas. "He looks good. He's finally starting to settle in." "Yeah," Lucas said, taking the treats. "It's like he knows he's safe now." The door creaked open behind them. Emily stepped out onto the porch. "Dinner's ready," she called. Duke paused mid-chase. His ears flicked at her voice. Without hesitation, he turned, trotting over to Emily with a wagging tail. Lucas followed, smiling, as Duke sat patiently in front of Emily, waiting for his treat. Emily smiled at him, crouching down to pet him. "Good boy. It's time for dinner." Duke sat, his tail still wagging, his eyes full of trust. He didn't bark or whine. He just sat there, content and calm, as if he understood that this was his home now. That evening, after dinner, the family sat together in the living room. Duke rested on the floor by their feet. It felt different. It felt complete. For the first time in 4 years, Duke had found his way back to them, not just physically, but emotionally. As Lucas rested his head against the couch, Duke's had gently rested on his lap, just like the old days. "Good night, buddy," Lucas whispered, running his hand through the dog's fur. Duke's eyes closed and he drifted off to sleep, content. No longer a ghost of the past. He was home. For 4 long years, Duke waded through storms, loneliness, and the unknown. He never gave up. He believed his family would return, and in the end, his faith was not in vain. This story is more than just a reunion. It's about loyalty, love, and second chances. It's about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the people who love him. Not all lost dogs get a miracle like Duke, but his story proves that hope is never wasted. If this story touched your heart, help us spread the message. Adopt, don't shop. Never give up on an animal who trusts you. Share this story so more people believe in the power of loyalty. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more heartwarming stories like this. And if you ever see a dog waiting by the road, maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for someone who still loves them.